afternoon. I will now call to order this meeting of the Thursday, April 19th Metropolitan Area Planning Commission. And we will start by asking for the public announcement.
Before we begin the agenda, the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission and the Wichita-Sedgwick County Board of Zoning Appeals would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this public hearing. Copies of the agenda for today's meeting, the public hearing procedure, and Planning Department staff reports on all agenda items are available in the lobby of this conference room. The Planning Commission's and the BZA's bylaws limit the applicant on a zoning, subdivision, or variance application and his or her representative to a total of 10 minutes of speaking time at the start of the hearing on that item, plus up to 2 minutes at the conclusion of that hearing. All other persons wishing to speak on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if they feel that it is needed and justified, the chairman may extend these times by up to 2 minutes. All speakers are requested to state his or her name and address for the record when beginning to speak. When you are finished speaking, please write your name, address, and the case number on the sheet provided in the lobby. This will enable staff to notify you if there are any additional proceedings concerning that item. Please note that all written and visual materials you present to the Commission and the Board will be retained by the Secretary as part of the official record. If you are not speaking but you wish to be notified about future proceedings on a particular case, please sign in on that same sheet. The Planning Commission and the Board are interested in hearing the views of all persons who wish to express themselves on the agenda items. However, we ask that all speakers please be as concise as possible and avoid long repetitions of facts or opinions which have already been stated. For your information, the Wichita City Council has adopted a policy for all city zoning items. A copy of this policy is available in the lobby. The City Council relies on a written record of the Planning Commission hearings and does not conduct its own additional public hearings on these items. The decision of the BZA is final. Any appeal of a decision of the BZA is to district court.
Okay, moving forward, I will now entertain a motion to approve the minutes from February 15th, 2018.
Moved.
Second.
I had a motion. Who made the motion? Okay, so I had a motion by Mr. Warren.
Correct. Second here. I seconded it.
All,
I did find some typos, which I got with Anna, and I'll show her
okay.
after the meeting. So that's all.
And who do I have abstaining from? Do I have any abstentions? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And Mr. Foster and Mr. Blick were abstaining.
And, no, Mr. Terrell on the end.
And then we will move forward with approving the minutes from March 8th, 2018.
I was not here, so I will not be voting. Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Mr. Warren. Is that right?
Yes.
And a second by Mr. Green.
Abstaining.
And abstentions by Mr. McKay, Mr. Klossmeyer. Was there somebody else? Yes.
Bob Duell, oh, yeah, he just came in.
And Bob?
So he will abstain.
Okay. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And then I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from March 22nd, 2018.
Second.
So I have a motion by Mr. McKay, a second by Mr. Klossmeyer. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And then April 5th,
I'll have to also, I wasn't here.
abstain.
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, have a motion and second to approve the April 5th meeting minutes. All, no. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries.
Abstain.
Yes,
Said abstain on that one.
you abstain. Do we have any other abstentions? Mr. McKay? Abstaining? And we'll move forward with the BZA. Is that correct? Okay, so we'll adjourn this meeting and move on to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Johnson, we're moving on to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Okay. Want you take that up? Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Case number 1, BZA 2018-00008. Is there anybody on the committee that'd like to hear that case?
I have a comment on that one.
Okay. Do we have anybody from the audience that would like to hear that case? Do we want to go ahead and take Mr. Foster's comment? Yep.
Comment would be a suggestion on the landscape plan. They've got over 1,300 square feet of pachysandra. Pachysandra does not like to grow in the sun, so you'd be wasting money to use it. I would suggest an alternative.
So noted. So I guess we can take that on consent?
So moved.
Any other discussion? Go ahead. Take
All in
this
favor?
over.
Aye.
Opposed? Green, and who was the second? So you got 2, 4, 6, 14, no. Okay, item number 2. I can't read that. Okay, BZA 2018-00011, city variance to allow for the reduction of parking for a clubhouse from 31 to 13. I assume that's feet. Generally located south of East 37th Street North and east of North Greenwich Road. Anyone in the commission want to hear that? Okay, so we'll hear it. Or is that just a question? You'd like to hear it?
No, I'd like to hear it.
Okay. The next item 3, which is 00012. Anyone like to hear that item? Okay, we'll hear that one. The fourth item is 00015, city variance to reduce the minimum required lot size for boarding, breeding, and training kennels. Anybody would like to hear that one? Okay. So we'll hear it. Okay, item number 2, who's presenting that? By the way, Mike, I'd like to thank you for texting me.
Welcome.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you were sitting in your office?
Yeah.
You put me under that pressure because you're just sitting in your office.
I've got your back, Admiral.
I know.
Hello, this is Kyle Kobe, Associate Planner. This is BZA 2018-11. It is a request to reduce what would be a required 31 parking spaces to 13 parking spaces. I'll just use these images to kind of tell the context of it. This is a platted residential development. It's one of the recent plats that's come through that the agent for the applicant has been kind of the point guy on several of these. The other one, BZA 12, is a similar style development where it's the reduced setback type of development pattern, trying to account for a more compact style of residential development. As of right now, like I said, it's a platted development. These images are just kind of to give context. This is looking south. This property is in like the northeastern corner of the city. This site plan right here, it doesn't have the dimensions on it like what you should have in your packet. But the applicant has provided plans showing the clubhouse, pool, pickleball court square footage. We use that to compute the amount of required parking per what you see in the staff report, which is 110 square feet per pool area and 100 square feet for the clubhouse area. And furthermore, the applicant has also provided the information that the site plan or the interior layout for the clubhouse will be virtually identical to another one that has gone through the MAPCD building permitting process. And during that process, there are portions of the building that, like restrooms, for example, that don't count towards the required parking amount in the same way that, say, like a open event space would. For all of these reasons, is how the amount of 31 parking spaces came to be. So, as you see in your agenda report, there's some information pertaining to how these assessments are made and where the parking requirements come from. Basically, there's a section of the code that has a table that lists out how many parking spaces per square foot, or in some cases per seat, or depending on what the use is. But they're sort of broad strokes, kind of prescriptive parking amounts. So this one, for example, is 110 square feet for pool area, whereas like a government service must provide one per 333 square feet. And I make a point in the staff report to point out that just because something doesn't necessarily fall into those prescriptive amounts does not necessarily mean that the plan is deficient. It just means that what that's accounting for is potentially just not as relevant to this particular iteration of that type of use. And the applicant's stance is that what they are trying to do is different than your traditional publicly accessible clubhouse with pool, where it would just be for the inhabitants of the neighborhood. With that, I think that that's kind of the general outline. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the presenter? Mr. Foster.
I've got two questions, one for the applicant and one for staff. Generally, it's not good practice to have parking directly off of streets, and especially on a curve. So I just want to make sure that staff is comfortable, and perhaps it's a traffic question, that this is an acceptable solution for the parking.
We haven't received any comments about from the traffic engineering department expressing concern or opposition to this plan. As of right now, I don't know that we as staff have any, unless Dale or Scott, if you've got any concerns that I am unaware of.
Traffic engineer in the past has approved similar requests. Now, I don't know if they were on a curb, but he has allowed back out parking onto a street for other swimming pools and clubhouses like this before.
Any other questions? Yeah, Mr. Richardson.
What's the square footage of the clubhouse?
The square footage of the clubhouse, the applicant, I think, might have I apologize, I think that the wrong version of this, I think it's 2,500 square feet, something in that ballpark. There is a site plan that we have that has these amounts on there, but I see that the version that made it in here doesn't have those measurements, but we do have those measurements.
Any other questions? Yes.
So staff is satisfied that this is enough parking for this many things going on?
Yes, I think staff would be in support of this application.
How many people use the pickleball at the same time?
Well, there aren't any, as far as I can tell, there aren't any seats. I mean, maybe the applicant can speak to this a little bit more specifically. I believe that would be a max of 4 on any one pickleball court at any given time. I'm not a pickleball expert by any stretch of the imagination. This functions very similarly to tennis in terms of how many people would be using the court at any one time.
Could be 8 cars there just for the pickleball court then.
In theory, yes, but again, the plan for this whole site is that the use would be restricted to residents of the neighborhood. So if they were to drive their car from their house to here, then yes, in theory, they would have 8 cars there.
And Mr. Daly, if you were playing, they probably would be surrounded the courts watching.
The fence would be screened.
Very popular
This
sport.
is not clown pickleball.
Yes. Go
Is
ahead.
there any on-street parking?
There's no striped on-street parking as of right now that I'm aware of.
But is the right-of-way sufficient for on-street parking?
I don't know that I could answer that question at this time.
How wide is the street?
I don't have the plat. The applicant can speak to that. I don't have the plat in front of me.
Save that question for the applicant. Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, agent or applicant? I'm starting to feel it now.
Good afternoon, Brian Lindeback, MKC Engineering, 411 North Webb Road, on behalf of the owner and applicant. To answer the question on the right-of-way and the street, this is a typical, development for this type of dwelling, and it's got a 32-foot right-of-way, and so that's a 29-foot street back-to-back. So it's your typical subdivision street that you would see in this scenario. It's one thing I'd like just make sure everybody understands is this is intended to be an active lifestyle community, traditionally geared towards maybe more senior residents, maybe as opposed to first-time home buyers. So I want to make that distinction. That the idea is that people would walk to this facility, and I think it's really important to keep in mind, to have a 31, parking stall count is really not in keeping with the design of the neighborhood, and so that's why we're here today. Is that, hey, we're trying to build a walkable neighborhood, and we've got sidewalks that create a looped sidewalk system. We want people to walk on those expensive sidewalks that we've built. We think it's a healthy thing, and we think that really the parking is set up for mostly guests, but certainly there's going to be 4 off-street parking stalls. Actually, it'll probably be more like 6 off-street parking stalls per dwelling unit if you count the garages. So really, the intent would be that, you'd go to the house, if you have some friends come over, and then you'd walk to the pickleball courts or whatever it may be that you're going to do at the clubhouse or pool. So I think that's just a really important distinction is, we don't necessarily like the idea of having a paved 31, count parking lot for a relatively small neighborhood. I mean, there's roughly 80 to 90 homes here. So it's not as though we have a 300 to 500 lot development here. This is exclusive to this part of the neighborhood, so hopefully that's enough information.
Yeah, Brian, are you okay with your time being running here?
Oh, yeah, I'm fine, yeah.
Let's go ahead and let him make his comments, and then we'll ask questions.
Certainly.
Go ahead.
As far as any concerns or comments, I mean, I think the report stands on its own. If there's any other questions that you guys have that I have not already answered, I'd be glad to answer them.
Yeah, Brian, could you go back to the aerial, or to the overview map that shows all, not that, yeah. What is the area that's actually going to be served by this?
If you follow my
clubhouse?
cursor,
Yep.
it's these smaller, narrow lots are all that's going to be served.
The 0 lot line.
Yes, the
Lots.
0 lot line lots. That's all that's, permitted to be in this, utilize this clubhouse.
Okay.
So,
I guess my concern is, If you have an event that, or an activity that more than 13 people drive to, you're going to have some street parking, and with the design of those zero lot line residences, it really doesn't allow for a lot of street parking. Appreciate the walkability of the community. But I could see, HOA meetings where it's in December and they're not really going to want to walk all that way, and you don't have sufficient parking with the parking lot per se, to accommodate street parking if it's needed.
That's a valid point. I would say that, the idea is to design for most of the time of the year, and 1 or 2 times a year that they do have a meeting up there or something. That's going to be an inclement weather. I mean, the other thing I would say is that, the facility has got multiple things going on inside the clubhouse. There's a kitchen area, a living room area, if you will, and then a exercise facility in there, and then there's just kind of like a little breakout room, if you will. So, quite frankly, there's only so much that one of those facilities can support. We've actually had a neighborhood meeting at one over at Auburn Hills, and there was quite a few people there. But yeah, there's only so much that the facility can handle. You need to take your event to somewhere else if it's going to be demand more than 13 plus stalls. So I think that's our intention.
Mr. Warren?
Brian, can you put the site plan back up?
Yep. So we've done this on this same site plan, just so everybody knows. We've got one in Bel Air. There's one also in Derby. And then there's one at Auburn Hills, like I mentioned. And then there's another one in Mays. So they all seem to be performing very well. But yeah, with that.
Brian, what's the area right there at the north end of the property, just north of the pool, that area right there?
I think that'd just be a gathering. It could be some landscaping there. Again, these are some concepts that we haven't really come to the full fruition of the design, but it would be just an area of just open space.
I guess my thought would be, there's nothing in your developer's agreement or homeowners association agreement that would preclude that from becoming parking later on if it is determined that there weren't enough parking stalls. I mean, it looks like there's probably 4 stalls in that area.
Yeah, I'd have to.
Would that be is there anything in your writing that would keep that from going into parking?
The only thing I would say on that is I would need to look at the plat. I'm going the wrong direction again. I'd need to verify that the plat has that as a parking area, that it could do that. When we approved the plat, there were certain areas that are set up for parking easements. So as long as that area could accommodate the parking per the plat, then certainly it could. But I don't know that that's, we want it kind of that neighborhood friendly without having this open parking lot feel.
Other questions? Yes.
Brian, we have a clubhouse similar to that size in the neighborhood where I live. And the majority of use there is for graduations, anniversaries, birthday parties, all that kind of thing. And we have probably 30 cars, and it gets filled up and they're out on the street. In addition to that, will these residents be able to rent that for, or reserve it, I should say, for outside activities? But that's where the parking is going to come from. It's going to be when you have a grandson's graduation party there. Virtually everybody comes is not going to live there, and that's going to be the issue. And I guess you've probably dealt with that in other places. But is that the idea for the clubhouse? You could rent it for your own events?
I don't know that they do renting of the facility. I can certainly
reserve it. In other words, if I live in there, can I have a party there where I invite people from outside the neighborhood?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that question. I do know that I've been to these facilities and they're kind of intended for the whole neighborhood to be able to utilize it as a gathering spot. For if you wanted to just go up there and have coffee together or whatever. So I don't know that they would necessarily rent it out per se, because they all pay dues that contribute to the maintenance and upkeep of them.
Well, we pay dues in our neighborhood too, so, but what happens is you can reserve the clubhouse at no cost, and then and in general, most of the people that come don't live in the neighborhood. They're relatives, other people who are graduating, all that sort of thing, and that, I guess if it is, it is, and the people who live there will probably complain enough that they can't get in and out of their driveways that'll take care of the problem, I would guess, at some point, because it's going to eventually be run by the homeowners association.
Sure. I would just maybe add that, it's about 1,200 square foot of usable space. I mean,
Okay.
it's kind of like if, I could have that at my own house, but, there's a threshold of what kind of party you can throw at a house of 13.
Yeah, you'd be amazed how many people show up. So, you tell them it's free food or whatever, they all come. But eventually this will be run by the HOA, isn't that?
It will be run
correct?
by the HOA,
So
correct.
they can correct the issue if they see it as a problem.
Certainly.
If I live across the street and I can't get in and out of my driveway, it'll eventually be miserable for whoever's having a party over there.
I guess I was going to make a similar point. A lot of times we look at this and we look at the effect it has on the surrounding neighborhood. If you can't park in your own area, there's really no place here to infringe upon except the people that live in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
So do we owe a duty to the general public buying houses there to point out to them that this may be a deficiency in their community?
It'll
Because
never
they-
happen.
That's a good question.
Because they can't park?
Could you please answer that?
That should happen, but it never does.
Right, so, but is it our duty to protect a potential buyer for that deficiency?
That's different than what you said. You
Oh,
said notify.
I've been trying to,
Now we're
trying to
saying,
grasp
don't let
it.
it go.
That's a
two
question I
differences.
have. What do you think, Mr. Miller?
People ought to have a responsibility to do their own due diligence. This is a product that, in my opinion, the developer is offering, and if people don't think there's enough parking, they shouldn't buy in there.
That's the way I would summarize it.
And again, Brian, you're saying that there's an exercise facility inside it too, is that
Yeah,
right? So
there's,
mostly it'll be used by people who we hope will walk to it throughout the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think, I really do think that in the other, facilities that are up and running, that it's really not intended to drive there from 4 lots away or something like that.
Haley, do you have a question?
Yes, how many lots are in the portion that will be served by this facility?
I wish I had the exact count, but it's right around 80, 80, 90, somewhere in that realm.
83.
But
So if half of them come and don't walk, then we're in trouble.
They don't come. They just turn around and go home.
Yeah. So,
or they just drive back around the block and park their car and then walk.
That's what you're faced with. Any other questions, Mr.
I have a question, I got a statement, but go ahead and finish.
You want to make a statement? Go ahead.
Well, this is not developed yet. It's just a concept. And I think they got plenty of room either on the right side of that with it, either lose a lot or even continuing that around the street. This one street is not a through street at all. This comment was made backing into the street. You can probably get another 8 parking spaces, at least minimum of 8 parking spaces by just continuing that down toward whatever that street is, Bedford or whatever that street is. Bedford. Just simply drawing straight on down through there. And, I'm in a development business and I don't like to see things done, but I think that from 31 to 13, it's, 31 to 21 might be a little bit better. And I think you can they show parking, then an open space, then parking, and then open space. And I think they'd utilize that whole, whatever side that is. That'd be the east side, the north side of the deal, that they could still be lowering it, but not near that many.
Okay, we've had a lot of questions here for the applicant. We'll give him a chance to rebuttal when we come back to him, but anybody in the audience like to speak on this? Seeing none, would you like to have time for rebuttal?
Just a short bit. I would just add that reiterate that there's, 5 of these developments that are active and operational, and they're not experiencing any parking issues, and some of them are fully developed. So I think it's important to make that distinction that this is a product that it's already functioning elsewhere. It's just the nature of this one is going to have a variance in this case. So,
And the others didn't?
the others have not had to have a variance.
So we haven't acted on anything like this?
That's correct. You have not acted on this in the past.
Need to clarify that. Oh, wait a minute, we got a lot of hands up here.
I just want, how many parking spaces are at the others, Brian?
This is a model based on the others. So in the realm of 8 to 13 is about what's typical. So
How did those meet the parking requirement?
some of those are in different communities. So that's how those have achieved that. And others have been achieved from off-site parking that we've built within the development. We've changed these 2 developments, that the next case you'll hear, to allow more parking on the lot itself. So
Or daily?
Well, that was going to be mine too, but are the number of houses in those units that already exist equal to the 83?
yes, they're all about the same count-wise.
And you have expanded some of them then, you say?
So this is some,
Expanded.
Parking.
They have parking counts that are similar to this. The thing that's different is some of those communities we've created some little pocket parking areas throughout the development, whereas this one we've designed it differently so that more parking will be on the lot itself. So we want individual parking to be on the lot. So
Now, you're talking about this lot.
this subdivision, correct?
any other questions?
I just have a comment.
Yes, sir.
I live in a neighborhood that has a community pool, and parking is, we've got over 200 residents there, and parking has never been a problem. We don't have the clubhouse or the pickleball, but I like the concept. I like the idea of reducing parking that's not needed. I mean, it seems to me, usually we see parking that just sits there and it's added expense, it deteriorates and ends up being a problem. They've got concepts they're using now that are working. I think it's a great idea.
Let's save our comments till we bring it back to the commission, but any other questions for the applicant or agent? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commission, and we'll accept your comment you just made. Sorry.
I thought he was done.
Any other comments? Seeing no other comments, what's the will of the commission?
Move to approve?
Second.
Mr. Hartman, second. Mr. Warren moved. Any discussion? Mr. Foster?
I want to make a substitute motion. I think Mr. Warren had a good idea relative to, there's about 4 stalls or so in this middle area, and Mr. McKay mentioned this is a concept. I don't see why this couldn't be expanded to at least 18 stalls total, including the handicapped one. It's just such a drastic drop relative to the requirement. I think at least ought to be in the 50% range.
I think I'm a little concerned about that landscape area. Cars backing out on a curved street. It would be maybe a lot better to have it. And that's where you're suggesting?
If they feel that's the right spot, whatever spot they feel is right.
Okay, and they could also pick up spaces where Mr. McKay was talking about. So what's your substitute motion?
Substitute motion would be to, rather than the 13 plus 1 handicapped, is push it to 17 plus the 1 handicapped.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on a substitute motion? See,
I just hate to get into designing someone's property that's already been through the process before. I don't know that,
well, it's just concept,
yeah.
I would assume. Any other comment, Mr. Hartman?
Brian, Mr. Green touched upon my question, is why I didn't bring it up, but, and Mr. Richardson did as well, is really understanding how that clubhouse is gonna work, because,
Could you come back to the podium, Brian?
you know, as Mr. Hartman mentioned, these innovative things are important and meeting the market and so forth. But I think we have an obligation to really flush out what the right answer is. So, you know, I wish you had a little bit more detailed comparison on these other communities that we can consider. Do you feel pushing that so we get up to 18 is just overkill?
Well, I personally would like to see more green space and less parking space. And if I'm a resident, I'm going to appreciate having that green space. The more we pave this development, the less green space we're going to have. So from a beautification standpoint, I think there's a lot of value in having more green space. I think it's very important to denote that this is a private neighborhood with private facilities. It's not for public consumption. There's a athletic, this part of the building, if you look up here, this is the part of the building that is more of an athletic workout room. This part of the building is a little room that you could have a small gathering with closed doors. There's a fireplace in here with an open space here, and there's I provide the floor plan. There's bathrooms on this side with kitchen on this side. I mean, this is a really small space that's intended for small gatherings, and it's intended for people to walk to. I think that's the most important thing here, is that this is a walking community. It's designed to get people out to walk and meet each other, and they're not driving from half a mile away. If they're driving from like hundreds of feet away. So I think it's really important to start thinking in those terms, and to think about the customization of the rules here. Rules are set up not to be broken, but they're also to be to interpret. And in this case, in this interpretation, I believe that having whether it's 31 or 18, I think that's going to be more than that's necessary for this site. So I would strongly recommend that we stick to what's presented here as far as a concept, and hopefully that helps.
Blake?
Just a question. You said this is going to be a senior community or retirement community. Do you feel that there should be more handicap spaces, because most of being in a senior community, they have a lot more handicap spaces? Does that make a difference or not?
We've actually talked about that internally at the office. I think we talk about senior. It's because you turn 50. You're not like in a walker yet. So I don't think that we've stuck with the 1 or 2 handicap stalls. So.
Sounds
Sorry.
Good. Thank you.
For
Mr. Richardson?
Brian, will this facility be constructed at the time they start selling houses in here?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point to make. We've designed these so that the facility can be built with the first phase, or if not the first phase, it's the second phase. This development here is only going to have 2 phases. So this will be constructed as the first sets of houses are built, so it'll be up and running.
Okay.
Hopefully
All right.
soon.
Thank you.
Okay. So you're saying you wouldn't agree to the substitute motion on its face?
I would not recommend that from our standpoint, no.
Okay, thank you.
I think I'll withdraw the substitute motion.
You are?
Yeah.
I guess I have to withdraw my second, right?
Okay, so we're back to the main motion. And is there any more discussion on it? Seeing none? Oh, Mr. Warren.
Just a question to make sure that there is no wording that would preclude them if, at a later date, if they discovered that they had a parking issue, that they could not use that, turn that into parking. Just leave that door open, let them develop it the way they want for now, but if they discovered there was a problem, just as long as there's no wording that would keep them from ever putting that into parking, then
Make the original motion.
I made the original motion, I would add that as a part of my motion, that there'd be no
And
wording
Mr.
that would
Hartman?
preclude that grassy area on the north end of the pool from the possibility of being
Optional.
added.
Mr. Hartman, you second it.
Yes.
I got a
You
question.
accept it?
Yes.
You accepted it?
Okay.
I think the issue here, as Brian pointed out, is going to be, I think, is a reserve on the plat, if memory serves me, and the question will be, does that reserve allow for parking? And surely it does. So I think it's probably unnecessary. I mean, what we do here is not going to override what it says on the plat anyway, I don't believe. So it's probably okay. I mean, we're all right, I think. Go ahead and include that in the motion. But I think if the reserve says you can have parking, then it's kind of up to them to decide where they
We'll
want.
go ahead and leave it in the motion.
Okay.
And the second agreed to it. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. 12-2.
McKay and Miles.
Okay, passes 12-2. Next item.
BZA 2018-12. This is a virtually identical proposition or application that the agent for the applicant has made. This one is on the western end of town. You can see from this aerial image where the site will be. It'll be kind of on a little peninsula. There's a site plan that you also have in your packet that shows the layout. These are just some aerial images. Some folks might remember that there's been some cases here recently, plats and conditional uses, and there was a CUP here on this corner. This is just to kind of give context for where the site will be, although I don't have any images to give you an example of what's built out there now, because it's at this stage still at the platting phase. I don't know how much detail you want me to go into it. As you can see from the staff report, the proposed development is identical to the one that we just heard, except it's just in a different location. The overall site layout is slightly different in that the pickleball courts are over here as opposed to over here, but the clubhouse itself will be laid out the same way.
I think it's fine. I think our commission will ask the questions if they have concerns.
I got a question.
The staff? Go ahead.
We did not include in our packet a layout of the lots for this development, and if memory serves me, this is a little more spread out than the other one is. Is there some reason we don't have a plat here in our packet?
I just did not include a full platting document. There wasn't a conscious choice as to withhold that information or anything along those lines. This plat is slightly larger, but the northern portion of it won't be serviced by this particular clubhouse, so the functionality of this would be pretty similar. I mean, maybe the applicant can speak more specifically to the total service area, but there wasn't a conscious choice to withhold the plat or anything like that.
If you, excuse me, if you're referencing the picture sheet that's on the front of the staff report, it doesn't show the lot layout because the plat's not recorded yet.
Mr. Blake?
With the photo that is presented up there, it says there's a reduction to 31 down to 13. I'm only counting 12 spaces.
The
12 or 13?
13. The application is for 13. I guess the conceptual drawing here, it might not show the same amount, but the request is the same as at the other location.
Okay.
These aren't the plans that they would take to MAPCD to pull a building permit or anything. This is just conceptual.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, agent or applicant?
again, Brian Lindeback, 411 North Webb Road, for the applicant. And just to, address maybe one comment about the plat. This again is at the front of the development. 135th is right here. You'll have this lake will be reconfigured than what it is today. But yes, this will be up front towards the front of the development, and there's more lots as they go in. And we'll probably have 3 phases here. The first phase is shown here in green, and it extends to the south. So, and just to make one other distinction of this development is there are estate lots, if you will, on the north. They will not have access to this facility. It's just for these units down to the south.
How many units are you expecting in that portion of the subdivision, Brian?
This one will have a little bit over 100. I believe it's 121 if my memory serves me. So there are a few more units up here. But again, sidewalks are being built in a looped fashion throughout the neighborhood. With that in mind, you'll be walking to the facility.
This one appears to have more on-street parking available than the last one, in the sense that that last one was basically all just the zero lot line developments, and this one appears to have some zero, at least in what we see of the plat, that some of it is zero lot, and then the other one, the rest of it is just normal building pads.
That is true. This whole side, I mean, there's nothing that would legally stop anyone unless we were to put up no parking signs along this whole northern edge where there's a water feature and open space. There's nothing that would preclude them from parking on street. I don't anticipate that to be the norm for sure, but that would be allowed.
Any other questions for the, yes, sir.
Same question as before. So this is just, when it says site plan down there, this is just a mock-up. It's not.
That's
You will
right.
do 13s. If it's approved today, you'll do 13 and not what is shown there is 12.
Correct. You can consider this an artist's rendering of what the vision would be, and then what becomes reality, maybe a touch different. But we're looking for 13 on this, even though the artist drew in 12.
Thank you.
Who is your artist?
This would be Ryan Ott. He's our landscape architect for this.
Any other questions? I'm sorry.
One more.
Yes, Mr. Florent.
Have you, what is the maximum walking distance from one of the units to the clubhouse?
So this one has a cul-de-sac that sits to the, let me get to a different map here. So this is probably a decent view. It's not probably the best, but so the road will come in roughly right in here, and those are trees. We'll try to keep all these trees along here. There's a significant amount of grading that changes, so just keep in mind this pond is no longer there. So as you come in here, this road wraps around, and then it dips down here, and then there's a cul-de-sac that comes back in here into these trees. This area back here is going to be an open space, and then this loops on around. So hopefully that helps you visualize how this works with the lay of the land. So back here will probably be the furthest part, and so they'll have a sidewalk on this looped street, and so it could be on the tops of a quarter mile, I would say that. But that would be on tops. I don't. And there's only a few houses back there, so I don't have Google. If I had Google Maps up, I could measure it for you, but certainly this is where the cul-de-sac is here. This is a quarter section, so that's a full quarter mile. So, as you will walk, I don't think it would be quite a full quarter mile, but it would be getting closer to it.
Any other questions for the agent? Seeing none. Anyone?
I'm sorry, that's a half mile. There's a half mile second. Sorry.
What?
I see Dale smiling, and it means I may have made a mistake. This is a half mile. Sorry.
Anyone in the audience wish to speak on this matter? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commission. Are you on rebuttal?
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Warren moved, Mr. Hartman, was it you? Second? Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Huh, got a 14-0.
How can you not approve this one after you just got through approving with the same people?
I know, but you voted against it first. Okay, item number 4.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be abstaining from this item.
So this is BZA 2018-15. Once again, Associate Planner Kyle Kobe. They are, what the request is for is to reduce the required minimum lot size for the type of use that they're proposing, which is a boarding, breeding, training kennel, from 5 acres to 1.1 acres. This aerial image gives you an idea of where it is in relation to just its surroundings. I'll kind of walk through where we are with the images and then go into a little bit more detail from the staff report. Here's some conceptual site plans. Well, at this point, I don't know if they're fully conceptual, that some of these were submitted for building permits. So this is should give you an idea of what the applicant is proposing. So as you can see, there would be a screening fence around the exterior where the dogs would be allowed out at. And the parking area would be provided in front, and this will mesh up with some of the site photos that you'll see here in a second. Here's just another Google aerial to give you a sense. Right here is where the applicant's current business is located at, and they're proposing to relocate here. This kind of gives you an idea of the proximity to this housing development over here, and as you can see, the train tracks are running along here. And here's another view, kind of just looking pretty much straight north, where you can see that there's some vegetation as well as a wall here separating these two, but it gives you a better sense of the proximity between the subject site and the houses. This is the roughly the full parcel area, so the structure would be more closer up here towards the northeastern portion of that. Here's a site plan which is oriented towards the north. On the interior, you can see that there's this play care space right here. There's some boarding areas over here, and then sorted other rooms. The parking would be out here, which you'll see on the next site plan. And then here's the exterior, where you can see the parking up here. And this is as far in as I can go, it looks like. Outdoor play area down here, relief area over here, and a concrete splash pad over here. So here are some images from the site. So this is looking southwest. As you can see, here's the houses that are on the other side of the train tracks. This is roughly where the structure would be located at. This next image is looking directly back the other way. So this would be probably the primary entrance to the location. This is looking northwest from more or less where I think the front door would be located at. It's kind of hard when you're standing on the site, but this gives you, this is the structure that's already built just to the northwest of the proposed site. This is looking back the other way from, so these cars parked here, you can see this one, and that's that car right there. Just to kind of give you some context of where this is looking. And then this picture is looking west across where the site area would be as well. This is the monopole that would be at the southeastern boundary of the property line, although the proposed development doesn't extend all the way out this far. And here's just a closer image of the railroad where it's running across and the housing development behind there. You can see that there's a wall and trees between the two. You can see in your staff report the proposed kind of programming for the development. There'd be approximately 8 staff. If they were fully booked, there would be up to 40 dogs in play care, cages and kennels for up to 150. And the staff report goes on to explain kind of the need for this. The code calls for this type of use to require at least 5 acres. This site is at 1.1 acres, which is what is being, the proposed reduction is that, not necessarily for the use itself per se. So some of the concern, we have heard some concerns from neighbors. I have yet to hear, aside from the attachment that you have in your packet from the neighboring property owner expressing opposition. I haven't heard any other. I've heard concerns from some of the neighbors, primarily based around this outdoor play area where the dogs will be let outside. And just to give you a sense of how this is proposed to work is the indoor play area. Sorry. The indoor area here, when it's nice outside, there are the garage doors that are on the back of the building right here that would allow the dogs to extend their, like, where the dogs can run at play from in to outside. If there were adverse weather conditions or at nighttime or anything like that, this wouldn't be occurring. The proposal is for this to occur only during business hours. The concern that you see on the a sheet that was in front of your chairs was from a property owner of this building right here, whose concern was that the barking noise might be detrimental to the businesses in the area. His suggestion was to add an additional 2 feet onto the fence that's being proposed. And I think that those are pretty much all of the relevant details. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
What's the proposed height of that fence now, Kyle?
8 feet.
It's proposed to be 8 feet, so his suggestion was to raise it to 10?
Correct.
Is that track in use, still in use?
It is in use. I don't have a count for you of how many trains go by per day, but I do know that it is actively used.
Hartman?
What is the reason for the 5 acre minimum?
I don't know that I could speak to, I don't know when the code was written, why that was the minimum requirement. Perhaps Dale or Scott could help explain that. I don't know.
I think primarily it was selected to try and minimize, noise is the main complaint that we get with kennels, and I think the thought was 5 acres was a reasonable acreage that would try and minimize noise from neighbors, although I live in the country and I can hear cows a half mile away every night.
I suppose the 5 acres never really dictated where the building and play area would be either.
Yeah, and that was a comment I was going to add. When we looked at this, I mean, the way the code is written, it requires the 5 acre minimum lot size, but then it lets the outdoor run be within 200 feet of the nearest residence. So you could have 5 acres and build it right in the corner closest to the houses, and the rest of the 5 acres really wouldn't matter.
Mr. Blick?
Question I have is, the proposed site plan shows about 34 feet from the back of the fence to the back of the furthest part of the property line. Roundabout estimate, what do you think the property line is to probably the nearest house?
Well, it's pretty close to that 200-foot limit. I don't know the exact measurements off the top of my head, but it's just over 200 feet, I believe.
Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, agent or applicant?
Hi, Emily Taylor with Hutton Construction, acting as the agent for the Eckerbergs, who are the owner of the property.
Address, please.
2229 Southwest Street. The Eckerbergs, like Kyle pointed out, they've been operating a business in the area for about 7 years. They grew up around here. They had moved away for a while to practice, and then they've moved home to start their business. And the demand for their play care services and boarding has just exploded. And so they're not looking to relocate here. They're actually looking to just get their boarding out of their hospital, basically. And we want to be really clear here today that all other portions of the proposed project are in compliance with the zoning code, other than the outdoor play care space. So boarding, training, kennels, those are all expressly allowed indoors on the property they've got, at the size they've got, 1.1, there's no acreage restriction with everything they've got going on inside. And really what we're looking to squash today is the misconception that outdoor play care and outdoor kennels are the same thing. You guys know that if you put your dog in a cage, he behaves a lot differently than if he's running around in your backyard. And so what they're proposing to do is not to have a bunch of runs with individually confined dogs outside. All of that's going to be taking place indoors because we know that's noisy. The neighbor who sent in a letter, some of the statistics that they put in about how loud kennels can be, they can totally attest to that. It's nuts. Their staff does have to wear hearing protection, but all that stuff's going to be indoors. So what we're looking at today is just specifically the outdoor play care portion, which is just this enclosed fenced-in area. And to the question about how far is that 34 feet from the property line to the next residence, we had started out with a site plan that looked a little bit different. These outdoor play yards were deeper, getting further towards the property line, but we have made a lot of adjustments to be in compliance with all of the other restrictions on this kind of service, including the screening, 6 to 8 feet. That's prescribed. We're in compliance with that. 200 feet from a residence, we took an aerial map and measured 200 feet from the closest house, and that's where we set our back fence. 50 feet from any contiguous property lines. Like the discussion about where did the 5-acre rule come from, the point about you could jam it in a corner and still be just as close, that totally applies here. So that's what we're looking for you to consider today, is that the definition in the code of boarding, breeding, training, kennels, that's not what they're looking, the kind of services that they're looking to offer outdoors. And we have some footage and some photos of the kind of play care services that they offer today. They do this at their clinic now, indoors, so just to give you an idea of what this kind of looks like. What we'd like you to note, you can obviously hear there's a dog in the background barking. This is at their hospital. That's a dog that's out in the lobby, probably waiting to get shots or something. But all the animals that you see on screen they're just hanging out or sleeping. If you leave your dog at home, the kind of stuff that would go on. But the service that they're looking to offer is an alternative to boarding for people who can't take care of their pets during the daytime. So, and again, here's some photos just of the kind of things that go on. Lots of sleeping. There's some orchestrated playtime. They obviously take naps. There's specific times for them to eat. Their owners bring toys and their food with them. So it provides a social environment for dogs to hang out supervised during the day, and all that we're asking here is that they be allowed to do some of these activities outside, totally supervised during business hours and in full compliance with all of the other limitations of the code, except for the minimum acreage of 5 areas. So if you've got any questions for me, or the Eckerbergs are here today, if you have any need
Green.
more specific questions about their practice, I'll take those now.
Looks like a rough life. Sorry. The one thing that I noticed in the staff report was that there would be 8 employees if you were fully to capacity with pets, you could have up to 15 employees. And I only see that there are 15 parking spots with the plat, or with your layout. And I guess the thought is what's going to happen with those that are dropping off and picking up their pets? There would actually be no accommodation for them to park.
Yeah, the maximum staff count of 8, when we say maximum, that's what we mean. That's
Oh,
if every kennel is
that there's
full,
just 8?
if
Okay.
they have every spot in play care booked, that's the most that they would need. The staff at these kind of places will share roles. Obviously, you don't have somebody standing in the kennels full-time. And the dog to person ratio in play care, they try to keep that 10 or 15 to 1. So
I misread that, sorry.
yeah, so the 15 parking stalls comes directly from the occupant load. We have mapped that out. We've worked together with MAPCD to determine what that's feasible and achievable. And so we've got a maximum of 15 occupants. That's including people dropping off their dogs. That's including, people coming to pay for services. So we've got 15 parking spots.
Okay, yeah, because I read that the total occupant load for the building would be 15 people. So I guess that's where I saw 15 employees. Read that as being 15 employees.
The 15 includes both employees and customers.
Any other questions for the app?
Question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Richardson.
Emily, the staff is recommending approval subject to some conditions. Have you read those conditions, and do you have any thoughts on those?
We don't have any opposition to, planting additional trees. Obviously, the Eckerbergs want to be good neighbors, and there's currently no vegetation out there. So the planting of trees, the limitation of their outdoor operating hours, they don't have any issue with that.
Thank you.
What is your reaction to the suggestion of a 10-foot as opposed to 8-foot on the perimeter wall?
My reaction is it going to achieve the result that whoever recommended it is going to hope that it achieves? I mean, is 10 foot or 8 foot, is it going to be, it's not going to silence anything that's not there already.
Mr. Knable?
I might point out, I'm looking at the code here, and the code restricts the height of a fence used for this purpose to 8 feet.
6 to 8 is, or 6.
Actually, it says 4 to 8.
4 to 8 is what prescribed, and they have chosen 8 not only to keep that screened, but also because dogs can climb. So.
Any other questions for the agent? Seeing none, anyone in the audience wish to speak on this case? Yes.
Thank you. My name is Shelley Moore, and I'm a owner of a business in the area, business building there in the area as well. And the Eckerberts are great neighbors. I have to say they've been around for, how many years did you say? I don't know, 5 or 7? Wow, goes by. The only thing I would like to request, I'm sorry, it's Shelley Moore, and it's 7339 West 31st Street West. I believe that's right. North. Yeah, 31st Street North. On your second page of recommendations, your second bullet is asking for staggered evergreen trees to the west. If you look where it lies on the plat, the backside faces southwest, and the other side faces northwest. And I visited with them and would like to request that, in addition to fencing, that the staggered trees might be placed around the area as well for the offices on both ends. And most everyone around those buildings, all around them, are professional offices, just as theirs is too. And I just thought that'd be a good clarification where that buffer will be. And that's really all I have. Just a request to do both of them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience wish to speak? Seeing none, we have a time for rebuttal. Maybe you could speak to that suggestion.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we were kind of sitting here together talking about, are there things that the Eckerbergs can do to being better neighbors to some of the businesses around, and we have no opposition to doing a little extra landscaping. We do want to note that this is a limited industrial area, and some of the, we're fortunate, this area is really fortunate that they've been inhabited by professional services for the most part, but just because we're taking up the last lot, this is absolutely not the worst of things that could have gone here in terms of what's allowed in limited industrial. So we're looking to be good neighbors in whatever way we can, but we also feel really strongly that that the services that they're proposing, that they won't decrease the quality of life or the quality of the working environment for anyone around them.
Anything else you would like to add in your rebuttal?
No, that's it.
Questions? Thank you. All right, we'll bring it back to the commission. Do we, what's the will of the commission?
Make a motion to approve subject to staff comments.
Second.
With the change in the landscape?
I don't know that much about landscaping. I think that if they could work it out with the neighbors, that'd be the best thing to do, but what do you want? Tell me what, there's a landscape architect down there. Tell me what.
He left.
He had to leave. What,
we have another one down there.
There's a suggestion, she accepted it. Are you okay with that?
Sure.
Okay.
I think the question was, where's the landscaping going to be? And I think the staff indicated it'd be all along the back. Is that right, Kyle?
That's correct.
And the suggestion was also to put it along the side. Is that? And so if we're okay with it. Okay, all right.
Who was the second? You okay with that?
Yes.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so it's 13 to 0 to 1 abstention. Tell Mr. Foster he can come back in the room.
Well, maybe Scott can answer my question. Scott, in light of the businesses that actually occupy this area, is there another zoning classification that could work here? There really isn't, is there? I mean, this office warehouse ends up being light industrial, which allows all kinds of other, I mean, her point's well taken, which was there's lots of other things, but there's not any kind of happy medium, is there? I mean, is that?
No, and this particular area actually was zone limited industrial in 1958 when the city did its 3-mile extraterritorial zoning, and I think the idea was because of the railroad track, this would be an industrial park.
Right.
There actually have been a number of down zonings of some of that original industrial to residential.
But it's not for office warehouse kind of, we're really stuck with limited industrial, are we not? I mean, is that?
I guess I'm not following your.
Is there another zoning classification? Do we have an office? We don't.
We do have an office warehouse.
We do have an office warehouse,
yes.
sure, okay. So that, most of these businesses could fit in that classification, that.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with what the businesses are to answer that question.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anything else we would like to talk about for the BZA? If not, we'll adjourn that meeting and call the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission back in order. Ms. Miles took care of the approval of the minutes, so now we'll go to the only subdivision committee recommendation we have, which is 00029, the final portion of an overall preliminary plat for Fox Run Addition, which was approved 6-0 by our subcommittee. Anybody on the commission like to hear this one? Nobody? Anybody in the audience wish to hear this? Seeing nothing, we'll take that by consent. Let's go ahead and get that one out of the way.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Miles, second by Mr. McKay.
I need to abstain from this one. I got adjoining property.
Okay, you can stay here because we're not going to talk about it, I guess. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, so again, we have 13-0-1 with an abstention by Mr. Klosmeyer. Okay, now moving on down to our public hearings. Number 4, case number 00016. Anyone on the commission wish to hear this case?
Mr. Chairman, I have a staff question on that one.
Let's go ahead and take the staff question. David?
Yes, sir.
We want to see if anybody in the audience wants to hear this, and we'd have to hear it anyway.
Well, that's a good point. Anybody in the audience wish to hear this case? Okay, so we'll hear this one. Let's go to item number 5, which is 00017. Anyone on the commission wish to hear this case? None. Anyone in the audience wish to hear this case? Okay, we can take it by consent. Item number 00013. Anyone on the commission wish to hear this case? Seeing none, anyone in the audience? Okay, so we have 2 by consent, item 5 and 6.
Moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bill Johnson, seconded by Mr. Green for approval. Any discussion? We're taking both 5 and 6. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, 14-0. We will have a presentation then, Dave, on item 4, number 16.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request to essentially amend a previously approved conditional use permit that was done in 2002. It concerned the property that the address given is 4551 South Broadway. It's this location, probably better to go to the aerial. If you've been to the property, you know we have the restaurant that's out front that faces onto Broadway, and it's that property behind. The conditional use covers the western, roughly 2/3 of the lot that is presently occupied by a self-storage facility. The issue at hand is a requirement that was made in the 2002 approval that there be a masonry wall built from, I don't know if I can enlarge this. Nope. Anyway, from the south side of the western building to the south property line, there is a gap. And I think I've got a copy of the site plan that shows, and this was what was approved in 2002. And you can see the very western, southwest portion of this property, and that's true of the plat too, is covered by a 100-foot easement that at the time was to City Service Gas Company. It's presently Southern Star Gas Company. They have a high-pressure gas line that goes through this easement. And the western building stops short of the south property line, and the original site plan had a wall that was required to be constructed, an 8-foot masonry wall that never occurred. You can see from the zoning that you have residential zoning to the north and to the west. That's single family. South is general commercial, and most of the properties south and the north of there along Broadway are developed commercially. But so the issue is only amendment to the original site plan. The applicant is requesting that instead of a masonry wall being built at this location, they be allowed to build a wooden fence. We did contact and discuss with the gas company. In fact, you should have a copy at your desk of a copy of the memo or an email that I received from Southern Star concerning what they are requiring. The conversation I had with the representatives from Southern Star, they indicated that they have had concerns about activity from the owner in this area, and apparently they've not done all the due diligence they'd like to see happen before they're drilling holes concerning, because this is a major gas line. If I understood him right, I think this is the one that goes over and serves Spirit right now. So they are concerned about drilling holes out there. And you can see from the email that the city service or Southern Star is asking for a detailed agreement, what they call an encroachment agreement, that is going to maintain and kind of control what happens if any activity occurs within that easement. Because of, and also the indication we got from from Southern Star was their preference would not be a masonry wall. They don't like to have those kind of structures across their easements, particularly when they have the big major gas lines of this nature. They would be a lot more comfortable with a wooden fence. There's still a gate requirement, as you'll note in the email, but beyond that, they did defer back to the MAPC, that if you're still of the opinion it should be a masonry wall, they'll work with that. It just changes the gate requirements from a walk gate to a much larger gate. They're asking for a 12-foot gate if we put a masonry wall in. So I would note that that masonry wall was a condition of a requirement in 2002. Indications are it was never built. And and I do think we have a neighbor here that lives to the west that's concerned about that, and probably can give you a much better history of what has occurred. One of the conditions of the 2002 requirement, and also I think it's true in our code, so I'll defer a little bit to Scott because he knows that better than I do, but there is a 25-foot landscape buffer along the west and north property line, so the existing buildings are not do set back from the property line the 25 feet. The plan showed some trees and some other landscaping. I think if you go out there, you'll see it's basically grass that you can debate about how well it's been maintained, but it's not fully landscaped that I think was the envisioned back in that time period. So staff is recommending approval of the amendment and require the wooden fence, allow the wooden fence, but they will, with the condition that they coordinate with the gas company to make sure there's no other issues with impact on the gas line. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Dave, I'm sure you don't know the answer to this, but whose responsibility was it to see that the wall was built in the first place?
Well, that would have been code enforcement, I presume, that would be the one that would enforce and maintain this, because at the time the original permit was given, there was no buildings out there at all. That was a requirement that followed through on that, and where that fell off the table, I don't know.
So to get an occupancy permit, they should have had the wall there.
I would presume that would be the normal protocol, yes, sir.
And I think Mr. Green had his hand up first.
Well, and thank you, Joe. That was my question. The masonry wall was required. They chose to put up a wood fence that's now dilapidated and in disrepair, and now come to find out there isn't any landscaping. Somewhere there's a drop of the ball to allow folks to go ahead and get a certificate of occupancy, yet the requirements that we might have set forth or that the code might have set forth have just been kind of ignored, and they can do whatever they want. How is that? How do we address that?
Was that when you were in charge of the city, or?
I was in engineering, so we always had our barricades up. Street smart.
So as a question for staff.
Well, I'm not sure I've got a good answer. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts once it gets to the building MABCD stage, and stuff happens. I mean, for example, on zoning, we've got one person that covers one half of the city, and we have another person that covers the other half. So there's only two people there to do zoning enforcement for the entire city. And I think MABCD does the best they can with the resources at their disposal.
I think I would add, and this is not to beat anybody up, but the protocols have been, at least as I have been told repeatedly, is that we respond on a complaint basis. We don't have the resources to send people out constantly looking for violations. So it's driven by a complaint. And unfortunately, particularly when you get a government the size of Wichita, when you do get a complaint or a violation involved, it can take a long time to work through ultimate enforcement. Now, there have been issues. You'll recall, just not recently or not too long ago, the case of the zoning down on 47th Street for the Mr. Masters and his mowing facility, and that was driven by complaints that started almost a year ago before they went through, and he actually ended up in court because part of the enforcement issue, if there's truly a determination that there is a violation that is warranted, the codes department doesn't penalize people. Their only recourse is to cite them under the codes, and I can defer a little bit to Mr. Van Zandt on this issue, but to a certain extent will be to cite them, and then they end up in codes court or in municipal court, and it's through the judiciary process that we get a determination, yes, you're guilty. One of the ways to rectify a determination that I'm out of compliance is apply to amend, and that's kind of where we are on this thing. So why it takes so long, sometimes I can't answer that.
Mr. Bill Johnson.
Well, I guess, well, just to respond.
Mr. Bill, oh, you want to respond? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I guess I understand the zoning concerns, but this was at the time of construction, and the requirements were not made at the time of construction, so.
Mr. Bill Johnson.
I guess being a commercial contractor, I feel like MABCD goes the extra mile to determine what's required. I mean, we get write-up sheets on every particular little thing about anything you try to do. From an inspection standpoint, most of the times I've never had one that's let something slide. They usually want to try to add 2 or 3 more things in order to get an occupancy permit. So I'm totally confused about this. But if there's somebody out there that waives some of that, I would like to know their name.
Couldn't agree with you more. Mr. Hartman.
Dave, on your recommendation for approval, would it include them putting in the landscaping that was never put in?
Well, I don't, that it's, well, I maintained the language regarding the landscaping strip. I have no problem if you wish to enhance that further by indicating that it needs to be brought into compliance with all the standards.
Okay. Mr. Foster. Then Mr. Blake.
Dave, I want to make sure, just to follow up on the landscape and the screening, the conditions that are recommended to us on page 4, will those supersede the original conditions?
The
reason I'm asking the question, if you look through these carefully, I don't see a mention of the northern screening, like the north fence. It, talks about maintaining it and so forth. And I'm just wondering if the conditions need to expand it to make sure that the northern screening is remembered and maintained. And it's the same way on the landscape. I was looking at a 2018 Google image, and it looks like on the north side there's a tree or two missing.
I did not recall. I thought I had just done a cut and paste of the original standards, but I apparently missed that. I would, the intent here is to modify essentially the reference made in the original 2002 approval regarding the masonry wall, to change that, which is now on on page 4 is number 3 about the screening fencing as a 6-foot privacy fence. Would be a minor error on staff's part then, because the intent would be to maintain the 25-foot landscape buffer, and that probably should reflect that.
It might work in conditions 3 and 4, just expand and say along the west and north. And same thing for the landscape. I just want to make sure that's not forgotten. And the final question is, given that the applicant shall maintain the landscaping, and I'm revising this to say along the western and northern borders, given that it is deficient, what will it take to bring them into compliance?
Well, I'm not sure procedurally how that handles. I presume maybe BCD is the one that follows up on inspections to verify that if there is required landscaping, it needs to be added, it gets done. So that would be the same procedure.
Hey, Mr. Blake.
Bill, this question for you. Limited commercial excludes outdoor storage of vehicles, is that correct?
There is very limited allowance for outside storage. You can store a few things as long as it's screened behind fence, but you can't have, storage by definition means it's going to sit there and it's not allowed at all.
So if a rental unit like this has a vehicle that's outside and they're using it for storage and they're having to pay for storage to have a vehicle, it will have to have some type of screening around it. Or if it's limited commercial, you probably couldn't have an outdoor storage and have vehicles outside of the storage unit.
I can't.
Yeah, the vehicle storage yard use that you're talking about where you store vehicles outside, that requires general commercial zoning. Limited commercial zoning, you can have vehicle storage, but it has to be indoors.
So that's one thing I noticed when I drove by this facility is they have outdoor storage units that they're using for vehicles. They're also doing a swap meet outside, and they're storing stuff outside. And so that's why I was wondering, with the limit, I definitely know that it needs screening for what is being used for it right now. But I was wondering, vehicles, if they're storing vehicles back there for storage, it probably wouldn't even fall within the current code as it is.
Right.
Okay, that's the questions I had.
Mr. Richardson.
Just to clarify, Dave and I traded some emails on this, and that there was no fence required on the north or the west, except for, you might bring that site plan back up again, Dave. The only place the wall was required was to the south of the building across that open space. There was no wall required on the rest of the property, as I understand it, just the landscaping, 25-foot.
25-foot landscaping was required as part of the original approval along the north and the west.
Yeah.
There was a wall required from the south end of the western building to the south property line across the gas easement. That was the interpretation we made from the original plan, and that you should have a little better version of the drawing in your handout.
And that does meet the code to have landscaping as the screening.
Did someone else have a question? Seeing none, agent or applicant?
Well, and you should have a copy of the email. The owner had called me and indicated that he's now in California. So I reiterated to him that I would expect that we have a lot of discussion, that we also expected to have neighbors show up, which is the case, and urged him to have someone here to represent his interests. But that's not evident here at all. So the applicant or agent is not here. So.
Just for the record, is the agent or applicant here? Seeing none. Anybody in the audience wish to speak on this matter? Yes, sir. Step to the podium and state your name and address.
My name's Jim Kelly. I own my address is 4600 South Main. I own the property that is on the west end, backing up that storage units. And I've called the city many times about the fence that they've got up. It's made out of corrugated, they use corrugated metal, plywood, whatever holds up for a year or so until somebody kicks a hole in it. I've got people cutting through that property into my property. I don't know what they're going in and out of there for. Somebody mentioned cars being stored. Last year when I was out mowing my lawn, looking through the knocked down privacy fence, they had a whole yard full of cars out there. It looked like a salvage yard. They were up on blocks and any other kind of craziness. I also attended the 2002 hearing on the conditional use permit because I owned the property then, and that gas line was there, and it's still there, and they got 6 feet of dirt piled on top of it now to protect the line from any kind of damage from above. I don't see why they can't have a masonry wall like they agreed to have in the first place. If they put up a privacy fence, it's just going to get kicked down. I'm going to have people cutting across my property. They also agreed to put up a 6-foot chain link fence. They put it up. There's a 18-inch opening on the south end of it on their property, I guess for their people that cut through their property to get through without climbing the fence. And the fence has got holes in it. Dogs get through it, skunks, raccoons. It's like living out in the wild. And they don't mow the place. It's maybe twice a summer they'll mow it, and they stay about a foot or two away from the fence, so the grass grows up 3 or 4 feet there. So, anybody got any questions?
Could you take the cursor and show us where the fence was, the chain link fence?
Yeah, it's, how do I do this?
Oh, it's there someplace.
Cursor?
Yeah, it's down there.
Oh. Right here, that's the chain link fence. And I might add, besides it completely degrading the value of my property, which is 3 acres, they got them, I don't know what you call them, but the deal that military bases use to hold the barbed wire up on top, real attractive. And the trees that they were showing for the landscaping, they stuck some little trees in there. I think they all died, and there's a couple volunteer trees that growed in there right up next to the fence. And they don't mow around them either.
Okay.
Anything else?
Any other questions for? Nope. Seeing none, thank you. We'll send it back for rebuttal, and since there's no agent or applicant, we'll bring it back to the
I got some staff
Commission.
questions.
for discussion.
Got a question for staff.
Okay.
Well, I do too. Go ahead and go first.
I recognize Mr. McKay first.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Since I
Well,
did-
all I'm saying is that if we approve this, then will that instigate him, making him having to do these things that he hasn't done in the past?
Well, it's still a condition, and I would presume we would add a little cherry on top of this action to basically ask and direct that MAPC enforce the conditions as they are on record, and would then trigger an enforcement action by the Code Enforcement Office.
We turn it down, he can just stay the way it is. Well, I mean.
Well, if you turn
legally,
down
no,
the
but
amendment,
what he'll do, okay.
the original masonry wall requirement would come into play, in which case, again, I would think that we would be communicating to code enforcement that they need to communicate with the applicant that they need to go back and actually construct a masonry wall and bring the landscaping up to code.
Dave, so if we leave it as it is, in theory, the masonry wall has to be built except the gas company saying we want a 12-foot gate of
Yes.
some kind. So that's
Yeah.
not going to be masonry. That'll probably be chain
Well,
link,
it
I would
wouldn't be
guess.
masonry. That portion would not be masonry. I'm not sure how we would manage that tweaking. We could make that change to say, if the commission wishes it still to be a masonry wall, with the exception being to comply with the requirement of the gas company with guarded gates.
In screening wall requirements, if there is an easement, generally it's the gap is bridged with a wood fence. And then it can be a gate, but usually what we'll have is a masonry screening wall that crosses a utility easement, and then that segment, generally 20 feet, is a wood fence.
Sorry, what is what? Wood fence?
A wooden fence.
Wood
yeah.
fence, and Southern Star is asking for that, to have a 12-foot gate.
They make reference to their development standards, land developers guidebook, and they talk about a 12-foot gate. I would presume that they would probably work with us in however they wanted to handle that. Historically, a wood fence goes in sections, and if they need to get through, they can pull a section out, and then it's easier to replace it. But
What precipitated the owners to file this application? Was it because they never put the fence up in the first place? Was it the pipeline company that wanted this changed from a masonry fence to a wood fence?
my understanding in talking with code office is that and probably as much as anything because of Mr. Kelly and the other neighbors complaining that code office did communicate with the landowner that they had a requirement to put this fence in or the wall in, and they applied to ask that be changed from a masonry wall to a wood fence. So they apparently were well aware of the deficiency from code office. To what degree within the code enforcement or the final action to enforce they were in that dialogue, I don't know, but that's what precipitated them coming in the office to make the application.
Mr. Warren. Oh, Mr. Bill Johnson.
The way I read this, the gas company would prefer not to have the masonry wall there. So that may be possibly why it wasn't put in when this thing was built, but whatever. So then we're gonna build part of a masonry over an easement that the gas company don't like, and then we're gonna put a wooden gate. I don't quite understand the approach. I almost think that it being all wood, I can see where it needs to be a fence, would be a better solution than half and half.
Is that recommendation of staff, right?
Our recommendation is a wood fence, a 6-foot privacy fence from essentially the south end of the west building to the south property line.
Got it. Any more discussion? I think we're ready. Go ahead, Mr. Foster.
Sir, is the northern fence in good condition?
They use the back side of the storage unit as the screen wall for that. The chain link fence, however, has been cut and gotten through.
Sir, I need to have you go to the podium so we can have this recorded.
No.
Thank you, sorry. Yeah, I know, but I've just got my job I have to do.
In answer to your question, the north line of the property is, they consider the screen wall the back of the storage sheds. And then there is the 25-foot easement with the chain link fence that has been cut and fixed by the property owners or the residential property owners many times. He also is in agreement with myself that they don't ever mow it, and there's rodents and a lot of wild stuff going on in that tall grass all the time. But the fences, they can cut that with a pair of pliers. It's real thin wire.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Anybody else? Okay. We have a motion.
I make a motion to approve for staff comments. The wood fence with a wooden gate.
Yep. Second.
Second.
Green, okay. open for discussion.
Make a substitute motion to denial based off the fact that this property is basically delinquent. They're not falling by previous code. And I don't see them possibly doing it in the future anyways.
Second.
We have a substitute motion for denial and second. Any discussion on the substitute motion? Mr. Klausmeyer.
What is to ensure, either way we go, that place needs to be cleaned up? So what's to ensure that it gets done? I mean, I don't know as I can support the substitute motion because it's not going to change anything, whereas right now, if we approve the original motion, that has been approved. There's a time period on it, and I'm assuming that code enforcement is on this. I mean, if I have a weed on my vacant lot, I get notices right away.
I think you answered your own question, who will follow up.
You know, that,
right?
I think that, well, I cannot support the second.
Okay, and we had another hand.
Well, I have a comment to ask staff.
Just a minute, Mr. Dillon. I'm being told I have a
Can you just do this
person
too?
next to me. Ms. Miles.
So I guess my concern with this is, even if we vote to approve a wooden fence, the original fence that they were required to, or the masonry was not installed. And they've put up some substitute fencing. They've not maintained the fencing that they do have. I think that if we allow them to put up a wood fence, it will deteriorate over time, and there's no guarantee that then they'll come back and maintain that wood fence any better than they've maintained anything. And it doesn't appear that they are too concerned about abiding by anything that's been put forth before them previously. So that's why I can't support this.
To respond to her comment.
Mr. Bill Johnson.
Thing is, a chain link fence wasn't a requirement, so whether it's there and got holes in or whatever, in my opinion, don't even enter the case. I think it needs to be screened. Gas company's gonna require a gate, which code enforcement's on it. They'll see that the fence is there in good condition, and they cleaned the lot up so that it's don't have trash and stuff.
I think I did hear testimony that there was a wood and metal fence that was never maintained beside the chain link fence. Okay, Mr.
I
Daly.
had a question for staff. Can we legally make a decision on what they have done and what they can do?
Say more about that.
Well, can we make a decision that, well, they haven't done it, what they were supposed to do, and so we can't allow them to do anything more because they haven't done in the past? Is that legal? That's legal, and
The analysis would simply be that the original requirements of 2002 would still be in force in effect, as opposed to, and the reason why the denial would basically show that, would be that there's no need for anything contrary or alternative to what those findings were back at that time.
so do you have
If
enough?
this, and I'm applying that to the alternative motion, is what I'm saying.
Well, and do you have enough experience with pipeline companies or whatever to say they really can't, or they can say, we do not want a
Yeah.
masonry fence,
Yeah.
and enforce it?
Yes.
So that's,
Yeah,
it's
you're-
just sort of
you're-
silly to, it's.
Foolish to put a masonry fence over the top of a pressure gas line like that.
I don't think there was an objection to having the masonry fence, but just where it crossed the pipeline, it had to be different. Is that correct?
Right. And that's
help you?
where
Well, yeah.
the gas companies
there's-
typically have those
I don't
encroachment
see
agreements.
the need in if they're gonna put a wooden gate, why they'd have to have a masonry fence. That's just, it didn't,
So you're speaking for the main
wood
motion?
fence.
Okay, I think it's Mr. Foster.
Coming back to that condition 4, applicant shall maintain the landscaping along the western border of the property at all times, compliance with the landscape plan approved by the planning director. Landscaping is deficient and hasn't been done properly. Does this need to be phrased that they need to get the doggone landscaping in place so that they can actually maintain something that should have been there?
I don't have a problem with that. Modifying condition 4 to indicate the landscaping is applicable to both the western and northern Barty, that not only do they have to have an approved plan of record, that they're also required to get it installed and maintained.
Thank you.
Mr. Warren.
A while to get my head kind of around this thing, whether the fence is concrete or whether the fence is wood is almost irrelevant if it's not maintained, and that's the problem that we've got right here. So whatever we do, I'm leaning. It took me a while to kind of come to. I'm leaning towards the wood fence because I think that would be more in line with what the pipeline company would want, and that makes a little more sense to me. But it's got to be enforced. Somehow we've got to red flag this, that all of the requirements that come with taking care of the property, mowing the property, maintaining fences, all be taken care of. That, these guys have skated more than long enough, and they need to be on somebody's radar, and somebody needs to jump in their doo-doo to make sure that they follow the rules that are applicable. So I'm gonna
Okay.
support the original motion.
All right, we have the substitute motion, which we will act on first. And can you restate that, Mr. Blick?
Basically denial.
And we had a second. So, any more discussion? Yeah, any more discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Can we show a show of hands for? So it fails 7-5. Okay, it takes us back to the original motion, and
Didn't get all 5.
Mr. Florence, Mr. Blick, Mr. Dool, Ms. Jones.
I got it.
And Mr. Richardson had left. Ms. Miles.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
We're back to the original. She's giving me ouch. Back to the original motion. Any more?
I've got 8-5. Is that right? Okay.
Yes, 8-5-13. Back to the original motion. Any more discussion on it? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Aye. Let's show the hands of those opposed. 3. Okay, so it's 10-3 passes. Okay, do we have any other business? Seeing none, or adjourn?